on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. And coming up on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at some potential Cincinnati Bengals cut candidates as we progress a little bit closer to Bengals training camp. About a month away here at this point. But obviously, OTAs and mandatory minicamp are now in the books. And everybody that's on Cincinnati's roster right now, obviously, is not going to make the football team. That is going to get whittled down to 53 players, and there's going to be probably a few surprising cuts. We're going to be talking about 5 guys on today's show. I think some of these guys could fit under the surprise cut candidate list, and some of them are probably names that we expect to see coming as well. Of note, doing a little solo producing here on today's video, so if you see me look down, whatever the case may be, just trying to do multiple things here at once as we progress through today's show. All right, before we get into today's show, make sure you guys hit that sub button for me. If you haven't done so already, it's youtube.com/Bengals TV. As you can see, our goal here for this month was to eclipse our June 2024 subtotal. And we only have about a week or so left in the month of June, and unfortunately, we have a ways to go. We need to do more than double what we've done throughout the entirety of this month of June here to this point. Need over 200 subs in order to hit that goal. So help us out. Hit that sub button if you haven't done so already, youtube.com/Bengals TV. And obviously, June, July, not much going on, right? Out of the 12-month calendar year, NFL stuff is really rampant throughout much of it. But late June and July, not much going on. But we still have videos for you guys here at the channel. Help us out. Hit that sub button for me right now. First guy I want to talk about here on today's show is Zack Moss. And you might be thinking, Zack Moss, he just restructured his contract. There's no way that Cincinnati is going to ultimately cut Zack Moss. But just because of that restructure, I don't think that necessarily saves him and guarantees him a spot on the roster. If you remember, we talked about this a couple of months ago. This was on April 30th. Spotrac put out this tweet saying this: Moss signed a 1-year, $1.7 million restructured contract with the Bengals that includes $375,000 guaranteed. Moss was previously scheduled to earn $3.475 million in 2025. Cincinnati picks up $1.7 million of cap space per the move. Now, parting ways with Zack Moss would free up an additional $3 million for Cincinnati against the salary cap. Obviously, that would be very beneficial. There could be a couple of guys that you could fit into your roster there with that spot. Obviously, could allocate that money to a star player. Perhaps Trey Hendrickson could be a guy that could get some of that cash as well. I'm a big fan of Zack Moss. I think Cincinnati is very happy with what they got in the 8 games in which Zack Moss was able to be available in the 2024 season. But obviously, the Bengals have kind of a loaded running back room, and more specifically, Zack Moss is coming off a very, very serious injury as it pertains to that neck injury that he suffered in practice last season. And obviously, that caused him to miss much of the season. Now, the running back room right now sits like this. Chase Brown obviously is that certified guy. He's that running back one. And then you brought in Samaje Perine in NFL free agency, and obviously you drafted Taj Brooks as well, which I think is a very noteworthy draft pick that you chose in the 6th round. Now, Cincinnati took 3 running backs on their active roster, that 53-man roster, in 2024. That doesn't mean they can't keep more here in 2025, but Chase Brown's a lock, and Taj Brooks is a lock, and I would think Samaje Perine is more of a lock than Zack Moss. Now, we could have this completely flipped, and it could be Samaje Perine that's on the outside looking in, but my gut tells me he's safe. So if they're ultimately going to keep Zack Moss, it would require them to take one more running back than what they did in 2024. And I don't think the practice squad really is an option for Zack Moss, right? If you're going to be on the practice squad, that means you get cut, and that means another team doesn't pick you up. And I think if he shows throughout training camp in the preseason that, hey, I'm healthy, I can still play at a professional level, some other team will pick him up. So I hope Zack Moss can stick around, but based on, how many guys you can keep on your roster, how many running backs Cincinnati has kept in the past, there's a good chance he could be on the outside looking in, especially considering that the Bengals would free up an additional $3 million against the cap. Pin comment time here on today's show. Will Zack Moss be cut by the Cincinnati Bengals? Be honest with me in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Type Y for yes or N for no. By the way, it is the pinned comment of today's show. So if the ad comes here on YouTube, you know the drill. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments and sound off for us. Another guy kind of in a similar boat to Zack Moss in the sense that, hey, he restructured his contract, but that doesn't necessarily mean he is 100% safe and definitely a lock. for making this football team. And that guy, of course, is Cordell Volson. He's played a lot of football for you. He was kind of eligible for the performance bonus from the NFL, but Cincinnati kind of said, hey, we're not going to be able to give you that kind of money. We had to restructure, and we'll give you some guaranteed money and see if ultimately you can make the football team. This is what Spotrac tweeted out later on, about a month after we got the Zack Moss news. This was May 27th, saying this: Cordell Volson signed a one-year, $2.6 million renegotiated contract with the Bengals that includes $500,000 guaranteed, per game active bonuses, and likely incentives. The move frees up $516,000 of cap space for Cincinnati this season. Again, doesn't protect him from being cut. Cincinnati would save an additional $2.5 million if they were to cut Cordell Volson, and they would only have to eat $664,000 in salary if that was a decision ultimately that they were going to make. Now, I want to be very clear. I think when it comes to Cordell Volson, it's very clear that they're in a situation where they're going to find out at some point this offseason through training camp or the preseason. This isn't a situation where it's like, oh, we need to stick around and see if he can, perhaps be the guy we don't want him to be come the regular season. He has to make a lot of adjustments, right? You have a new offensive line coach in Scott Peters that publicly has come out and said, hey, we believe in Cordell Volson. We believe he can impact winning here in Cincinnati, and we believe that he hasn't played his best football yet in the NFL. But if that change hasn't started to happen by the time these preseason games roll around and he's out there on the football field in the preseason kind of playing the same way that he was ending last season, obviously that is a red flag, and I think Cincinnati ultimately would decide to move off him at this point. This is what you have along your offensive line right now. Seems like they want Dylan Fairchild to be that guy to come in as a rookie and essentially play and start at that left guard spot. And your tackles obviously are set in stone, as is your center. Really, the only position that is kind of up for grabs. Left guard can sort of be up for grabs, but I think Fairchild personally has a lock there. Right guard is up for grabs. Now, can Cordell Volson make that switch over to right guard and be a starter? Perhaps, but it seems like that competition is more between Lucas Patrick and Cody Ford. And at the end of the day, if Cincinnati doesn't see Volson as a starter, probably makes the most sense for them to cut him. Again, do not miss any Cincinnati Bengals rumors, news, you name it. We've got you covered here at the channel. Don't miss out. Hit that sub button for me right now, youtube.com/Bengals TV. We will have you covered all season and all off-season long. 3 more players I want to touch on today's show. Isaiah Williams. He had a really productive year for Cincinnati. You might be saying he only caught like 2 passes. He didn't do much. Well, he had to fill in for Charlie Jones as a return specialist, right? You saw him both out there for kicks and punts, and I think ultimately that really helped Cincinnati as it helped kind of stabilize that position. And more importantly, when you hear people talk about Isaiah Williams within the Cincinnati Bengals building, they absolutely love this guy. And I think there's a good chance that he could perhaps stick around. So, again, I think the casual fan will probably be saying, well, yeah, of course, Isaiah Williams is going to get cut. The Bengals ultimately are going to move on for him. But I don't think that should be assumed. There's a lot of people in the building that have a lot of love and admiration for Isaiah Williams, how he handles his business, right? He is a professional in all senses of the term when he's out there on the football field, and he showed that last year. And honestly, he showed it when he was in Detroit as well. Bengals and most teams in the NFL typically keep 6 wide receivers. I think that's something you will see them do once again, and I think the first 5 spots are kind of locks, and it's the same 5 guys as last year. Obviously, Chase and Higgins and Yoshi, you can check those 3 off. Those are automatic locks, and it seems like the Bengals are going to give Jermaine Burton another shot here, so it looks like he is going to be a lock as well. Charlie Jones feels like a make-or-break year for him. Think he'll get another opportunity here in year 3, and then you're down to that last spot. Who is going to be that 6th wide receiver? Is it going to be Isaiah Williams? Would it be perhaps a guy that was formerly a UDFA and Cole Burgess? Perhaps Kendrick Pryor finally gets a shot to actually make the team. I would say right now Isaiah Williams is the front runner. Bengals would save a little bit of money. I think it's still less than $1 million if they moved on from him. But that position, that wide receiver 6 position, is very interesting. It'll be cool to find out, how they exactly fill that spot and which guy ultimately ends up getting cut and doesn't get that last spot. Will Isaiah Williams make the Cincinnati Bengals roster? Let me know. Be honest with me in the comments section of today's show. Type A for yes or B for no. A couple of more names here that I want to get to. Tanner Hudson certainly is an interesting player to keep an eye on. He, of course, plays the tight end position. thought overall he was solid for you this past year, and honestly has been solid for you throughout his entirety of these past 2 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals. Taking a look at some of these numbers here, when they throw him the football, he tends to catch it, and it tends to be productive yardage for Cincinnati, over 500 yards in 23 games played, and 2 scores. Unfortunately for Hudson, a lot of Bengals fans think about all the way back in Week 1 where he had an opportunity to perhaps have his 3rd touchdown and ultimately was able to fumble that football right by the goal line, arguably cost Cincinnati the football game, and I think kind of leaves a negative taste in the mouths of a lot of Bengals fans, and that unfortunately is just the case, the way things are as it comes to Tanner Hudson. But again, he's put some really good play out there on the football field for Cincinnati, good in the locker room, is a great teammate, and those are, of course, the guys that you want to keep around. Now, the tight end position. How are you going to handle this, right? Cincinnati kept 5 last year. What are they going to do this year? Sample and Gesicki certainly are locks, and Eric All Jr., if you remember, he's going to miss the entirety of this season. So he's not going to be a guy that's going to be taking up a roster spot. Now, this could be a year where Cincinnati only takes 4 guys, right? I think typically that is what most teams do. I think 5 was definitely a stretch. They definitely took 5 because they had a lot of belief in Tanner McLaughlin. And that is why I listed Tanner Hudson as this guy and not Tanner McLaughlin, because McLaughlin will be year 2. By the way, he was only active for 2 football games this past year for Cincinnati and really was not able to do much. But as we know, Cincinnati wanted to keep him on the roster because they were afraid another team would scoop him up from the practice squad, and that's why they elected to keep him around. Would they cut him in year 2? I don't know, but he's got to show some growth. I was really high on McLaughlin when they picked him. The fact that he was only able to get out there for 2 games was a surprise to me. Would they cut a guy in year 2, 6th-round pick? Certainly. It could be a possibility, but I think one of the Tanners could be on the outside looking in, whether it's Hudson or McLaughlin. And of note, the Bengals would save the entirety of Hudson's salary, about $1.255 million, if they did release him with no dead money. Last guy we're going to discuss here on today's show is Joe Giles-Harris, and I think this one probably is the least surprising out of all 5 of these guys. If you remember, the Bengals actually signed Joe Giles-Harris really just a couple of months ago, kind of a late ad here in the offseason. He's bounced around throughout his career, has spent some time in Jacksonville, has spent some time in New England as well. 22 total games for Joe Giles-Harris, a veteran guy. It's been around the block. Can certainly help provide some leadership for you. But the Bengals went after the linebackers, and they went after the linebackers hard in this past draft, picking 2 of them, in Demetrius Knight Jr. and, of course, Barrett Carter. You bring in Oren Burks, and you have Logan Wilson kind of as that stabilizer there as well. And he's that running back or that linebacker 1 for you. So, look, the Bengals kept 5 linebackers last year. That would probably be my guess in terms of what they are going to do again this year. And I would be surprised if Joe Giles-Harris was able to beat out a guy like Muma Jongmeta, who made the team as UDFA last year. I think the Bengals love Jongmeta, and I think he will be back on this football team. Joe Giles-Harris probably going to be on the outside looking in. The Bengals would save over $1 million if they release Joe Giles-Harris. Make sure you guys give me a follow over on Twitter at StoneShields_. All of our Bengals Breakdown content will be posted to my Twitter page. So help me out. Give me a follow over on Twitter.